You know he wants to do it, but I really have to hope that Pedro does not open minor poison here.
I know. I mean, but it's one of those things. It's like, you really think I'm going to do it again right now? And as of right now, it looks like he just might be running it back. And then we'll see if Mugi takes a page here out of Juicy's book and goes for something heavy, goes for something with lightning. Fisherman, not a bad sign of that.
And this little prince is going to get picked up and reset by the fisherman. Mugi splits his goblins in the back. And here we go. It's Mortar game number 1.
And Gob Giant right into it.
What up, future king?
And as a Mortar player, this isn't a great spot to be in, but you do have that little prince to help everything out. And Valkyrie, we have not seen a lot of her in this competition, and you see Pedro bringing it out in the biggest moments.
And opting to save the elixir and not call in the Guardian throughout that whole exchange. Happy to sacrifice a little bit of damage.
Oh, and now he has an opening to do it. Those bats stop it. Now we see a miner going behind. Is that a small mistake? No, Mugi has some decent defense for it.
Bats for both, but Evo Mortar for Pedro. Evo Bats for Mugi as he mortars to the opposite lane.
And Little Prince, a great response to that. And you see Pedro maybe playing a little bit too similarly to how he has in the past. You knew he was going to get doubled down. You knew he was going to try to protect the Mortar. Mugi immediately pulls the trigger on that Guardian and gets some good damage out of it.
This might be the second or third time Valkyrie's been played all weekend.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to come out in this moment.
And Mugi maybe opting to take some damage. He knows Mortar is out of cycle. He knows he can double down on this push. And if his opponent is able to cycle all the way back around, Mugi's thinking he can take advantage of that with his spell power. There we go. Evo Mortar at the bridge. You knew it was coming.
And doing a good job taking advantage of the focus that Mugi had to place on the little prince there to engage with the bats there at the bridge.
And Mugi ready for every single one of these miners so far, Rich. 25-87, 27-09. Our former world champion is turning up the heat. Fireball Rage on top. You know it's coming.
Oh, boy.
That is brilliant.
Boy. Bats in. They are being tanked for by the Guardians, so they will survive for a while.
And to pick up a game off of Pedro while he's playing miner is such a huge swing in momentum.
Oh,
and look at that, predictive miner, Rich.
And the snowball behind. Will this be enough to get Mortar on tower? No, Goblin Giant goes to the opposite lane. Pedro trying to protect, but that Mortar's not going to get as much as he would like.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit too much. All of us Mortar players have been there before. You want to double down at the bridge. You want to make sure you can get that connection, but look at that right-hand tower. Mugi is so happy to eat those maybe 2 Mortar shots. No, takes 1 down to 1060.
Take some to give some, and now the Mega Knight comes out. Mugi maybe realizing that Pedro struggled against the rage plays this time, not throwing the bowler in here as well.
And I love this play because the worst thing that happens when you cycle those goblins, Rich, is you can't pick up a miner. But look at the push on that right-hand side.
Devastation, 884, 90 seconds left, and Mortar has just not had the magic that's carried Pedro thus far.
A very nice Goblin Giant. I was kind of looking at the elixir bar there of Mugi, wondering how he wanted to respond, and he has played this absolutely perfectly. 1981 now to 884.
Finally starting to catch up a little bit is Pedro, but is the gap too big with 90 seconds left playing Mortar Miner against... There you go.
I like this play a lot, Rich. I really think you got to go hyper-aggressive because we all know Miner Poison, 3-card cycle, and you see Pedro's face. He knows he got caught looking. Mugi, back-to-back wins, and now is 1 game away from being repeat world champion.
Pedro has got to be shaking in... Oh, thanks, guys.
I'm not mad about that one.
Yeah, that was nice.
That must be Rich over there.
And Pedro may be just trying to get some emotes out, just so his fingers do something and he feels a little more comfy.
Yeah, I mean, comfort is what he needs. He doesn't have his comfort deck. He loses with it in game 1. He has the advantage in the previous set. And now all of a sudden, a man that's been here before is just 5 minutes away from glory.
And it's interesting, Andrew, we've taken the whole weekend without really any real staring contests, and then here today, in the last couple of matches, we've seen not one but two.
And you wonder how much of that is actually nerves, right? You know, you go back to that other game where Mugi's playing basically a 4.0 average elixir cost, and Pedro then looking, hindsight is 2020, always you go, should I have just been a little bit more aggressive in single? Because that beatdown push in triple maybe would have just been less easy for him to pull off.
Mugi cycling arrows just to maybe get the right cards in his hand. A little chip damage there to open things up. 40 seconds left until we get to our double elixir time.
I don't know how I feel about putting myself in a position to have to win a game in 1 minute against Mugi.
Yeah, that might be the scariest thing I can imagine.
Yeah.
Does Pedro go big here?
And looking like our admin wanted to get a quick little emote in there. Shout out to whoever that was.
And here we go. Final 10 seconds of regulation. What do you pull out here with everything on the line? Baby Dragon for Pedro.
And Ram Rider to counter from our former world champion.
Pedro will be very happy to have Bowler against the Ram Rider.
And E-Giant. And we see immediately Mugi go opposite lane with that Lumberjack.
He's been so good at knowing when to do that.
And back around to arrows soon should be Mugi. And there we go. This is a pretty great E-Giant on that right side. It just ate Mugi's entire defense up.
And now right back to it. Opportunistic Mother Witch at the bridge. Oh boy.
Tombstone out, Ram Rider in. Doesn't even need the arrows, and that's a big connection.
And the archers aren't following the E-Giant, so they might do a little pressure on the left-hand side, but they really aren't very helpful right now.
No, I think you just straight up ignore them. Recruits will do more than enough.
And they absolutely do. Electro Giant shredded. Now Bowler having to deal with this push on the right-hand side. E-Giant to pull. And Kite here in the middle. Mother Witch in response by Mugi.
Decent damage there from the recruits on the E-Giant, but you obviously want just a little bit more of it. Anti-lightning positioning there with the God Cage. Nice play, and Lumberjack high enough to where you're not comfortable to pull the trigger on that lightning.
Arrows plus poison covering both phases of the archers.
And one of the most under-celebrated cards defensively in the game is that Mother Witch, because she's able to put in a little bit of damage and then make those piggies tank for her. And right now, she's getting so much value from this Tombstone, Rich. I think Pedro needs to be a little bit more cautious about just cycling that Tombstone.
He's not being very conservative here. NATO does hold, though. He has E-Giant plus Archer on the left, Bowler plus Archer on the right. That Electro Giant not going to get much for him.
And recruits back in. Only 1 minute remains here. Mugi basically untouched. 58 seconds away from being a repeat world champion unless Pedro can turn things around and turn them around quick.
Pedro needs to get a Tombstone down. Instead, he's letting the E-Giant stun. E-Giant stun should completely give Pedro great opportunities against that Ram Rider, as every time it snares, ends up hurting itself. But so far, that has not been the story.
And now you can see Mugi turn up the heat on that right-hand lane if he'd like. Tombstone out early, maybe a high Mother Witch. Just has to go defense.
Electro Giant behind, and the archers are not far enough away to totally ruin that Lumberjack. Lightning in, and the arrows clear. One evolved archer still alive.
Rich. Mugi is moments away, 27-35, 23-03, and I believe we might have our first ever repeat world champion, and that is it. 2021, 2023, champ, that's Mugi. He had not lost a game until earlier today when he ran into Pedro. Pedro is the only person who was able to get Mugi's number, and Pedro takes one, Mugi takes the rest.